When the then 20-year-old Michelangelo Caravaggio left his hometown near Milan in the summer of 1592 to go to Rome, he was undoubtedly already strongly shaped by the art, culture, and the certain scarring events that took place in his early life, which many experts have used to perhaps justify his brilliant yet very dark visual style and approach to creation. By age 20, Caravaggio had lost both his father and grandfather to the plague on the same day of 1577, had been raised in extreme poverty, had had numerous quarrels with artists he was training with or under the tutelage of, and the list goes on and on. In fact, Caravaggio is described by historians as being both as equally passionate as aggressive. And a great source of this aggression stems precisely from his familiar background. Caravaggio's family was not wealthy or noble by any means, but they had the connections to the individuals and families that were, which led to his social status being constantly challenged and thus the rise of confrontations and arguments around it. And while many of these would lead to personal misfortune, Caravaggio managed to always forge or leverage connections to powerful patrons who would either commission works from him or provide him with the connections and or protection in the moments that he needed it the most. Once in Rome, he found a great demand for artworks, particularly to fill the many churches, palaces, and magnificent buildings being built in the city that at the time held the keys of culture and artistry in Italy. Rome provided Caravaggio with a vast network of studios, working artists, the Catholic Church, and wealthy patrons willing to commission more and more work from him. And when we talk about the church actually plays a very important role in why we are still seeing the paintings of Caravaggio, because at this time, this institution was seeking change, a change from the harmonious ideals of the Mannerism style, which could elevate the image of Catholicism, that during this period in time was facing the rise of Protestantism. During the Council of Trent, one of the most important decrees concerning art was, quote, that art should strive to help Christians understand and reconnect with their faith. And that is exactly what Caravaggio is going to do through his technique. And so this is why I wanted to make this first introductory note so that we could understand why Caravaggio was so important and some of the conditions and characteristics of his style and how do they come to fruition in painting the darkness of his life. Actually, I feel as though it almost like transports itself to the darkness that we see in the paintings, but at the same time there's a set of conditions that really allows him to be extremely fruitful with his creativity, and as we'll see around 1600 and 1599 he will be one of the biggest painters in Rome, and some of the paintings that he produced were some of the, masterpieces that we're still seeing today. So this is so important because this allowed Caravaggio with a very unique style at the time. So his style is very characteristically naturalistic. Actually, some people would describe it as extremely naturalistic, with a great attention to detail, combining this with a very different use of light, and that we can call chiaroscuro. But we'll see what this is exactly about and how he applies this technique. What is chiaroscuro? From the Italian chiaro, light, and scuro, dark, it's a technique employed by visual artists that use strong contrasts between light and shadow, leading to bold contrasts that affect the whole composition and the viewer's perception of it. However, chiaroscuro isn't only an attribute of Caravaggio's paintings. Many other artists had used this technique before, such as Titian or, famously, Leonardo da Vinci. However, what separates Caravaggio from the rest is how accentuated his chiaroscuro technique became. In fact, the contrasts were so pronounced, so dramatic, and so harsh that it came to be known as tenebrism, which is a direct translation from the Italian tenebrismo, which stands for somber, obscure, or sinister in some cases or translations. which reinforces then how different Caravaggio's application of chiaroscuro was perceived as not only a visual style or choice or stance, if you will, but it is perceived almost as a state of mind that affects the tone, the storytelling, and the feelings it communicates to the viewers. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is this relevant to photographers, to visual creators, in case if you're a photographer but also dabble with other mediums? I guess that my answer is that just like painters, photographers are able to capture beauty, to translate or perhaps communicate information, ideas, meaning and intention through light. Light is the source of everything, and everything is sourced by light. If I literally snap my fingers and cut off light, you can't see me. But bringing the light back up here, I just want to point out that light truly is important, and we as photographers will study light continuously. It's a process that will never end because light is so mutable, light is so important, light is so, when we travel to different places, light is different there. The tones that it enhances, it's so complex, the study of light, and that we can only do it through, I believe, three things, and that would be observation, experience, and of course, analysis, which is exactly what we're going to be doing when we break down some of the paintings or some of the most famous paintings, created by Caravaggio, and we'll see how light really brings to the surface level meaning and intention and how important these details are and why they have to be, no pun intended, highlighted. The calling of St. Matthew, completed between 1599 and 1600, reflects on the following moment. Quote, "Passing along, Jesus saw a man at his work collecting taxes. His name was Matthew. Jesus said, 'Come along with me,' and Matthew stood up and followed him." This painting is perhaps one of the best known by Caravaggio, and the reason why is precisely due to light and shadow. First, we have a very directional light which illuminates the subjects in such a way it almost makes them come to life. This light is precise though. It illustrates each detail, each expression, and each emotion. Suddenly, hands, gestures, and gaze have a greater role in communicating the drama and the energy of the scene. Now, beyond this naked eye impression or interpretation, if you will, the accentuated chiaroscuro serves the meaning of the metaphor taking place. This is actually a passage in the Bible where Jesus, by calling Matthew into his service, creates a transformation in Matthew's life. Matthew, who was very moved by money, willingly parts way of his worldly possessions to take a more righteous path. And here, this precise visual contrast is, I believe, applied so that this dramatic change can be more emphasized, and the fact that Matthew from now on will be guided by light. And we can assume here that it is a victory of light and holiness over greed and materialism. Now, I want to highlight, no pun intended here again, but I'm not by no means like a expert on the Bible or on the work of Caravaggio. I'm not a historian. I'm just giving my personal take on this, okay, based on what I know from the Bible and what I know from Caravaggio's work. And I've studied a lot of Caravaggio's work. I did mention that before in videos. So I am, very comfortable with his work, although I am not an expert. So I just wanted to highlight that. Now, I want to actually bring us to another painting that is super famous as well, painted around the same time, and that would be Judith beheading Holofernes. Completed around the same time of 1599, Judith beheading Holofernes tells the biblical story of Judith, who saved her people by seducing and beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. This story is described in the book of Judith within the Old Testament. And here, when observing light, we can infer that it is light the source of melodrama in this painting. Judith had been really represented before this, or traditionally, if we can say, as very triumphant over the general, whereas here she is represented as determined but also slightly drawn back, as if disgusted. Holofernes' expression, though, appears surprised yet helpless during a last instance of, shall we say, consciousness, whilst the servant, whose clenched hands are so importantly illuminated by the harsh contrast, communicate the pose and language of someone whose bloodthirstiness is guided by his own ulterior motives, whatever those might be. This is just my reading. And while this scene in particular had been painted many times before, what sets Caravaggio's painting apart is the fact that it becomes more than a simple representation. There's intent, there's emotion, there's drama, and closeness to how complex human behavior is. In essence, these biblical figures, which were always almost wrapped in idealism, gain a human dimension in Caravaggio's painting. And on this topic of the humanness of these figures, I think it obviously makes sense to the note that I made initially of the church wanting an approximation or a closeness from a mostly illiterate audience to, what is the teachings and the word in the Bible and in Catholicism. So it's important to understand that, but also I wanted to make a note in regards to that. There was a big scandal around the models that Caravaggio was using, and there is because Caravaggio was modeling a lot of these figures in these immaculate, beautiful paintings from people that we would say or probably consider from less prosperous backgrounds in life, okay? So petty criminals, gamblers, some sex workers, for instance. So when people got to learn about this, it was actually a massive scandal, and one of the sources that contributed to his quote-unquote downfall, even though I would say it's mostly created by himself and by his own actions. Caravaggio had numerous problems with crime. He, almost killed a man, or I think he killed a man in one instance and nearly killed another one in another instance. So it's really, he has a very chaotic life, which definitely does not match the power or the, I'd say, beautiful message in his paintings. I picked up this book on Caravaggio that I really would recommend you. I'll leave links to it down below. And on the topic of painting with light, I actually picked up this book literally titled Painting with Light by John Alton a really long time ago. And this is what really awakened me to the interest of studying light and looking at different sources. So the idea of remaining open. John Alton, many of you might know already, but he was a key cinematographer back in the 30s and 40s, specifically when it comes to film noir, in the film noir industry. And in this book, he goes, again, I'm going to be leaving links to this down below. He goes through, the importance of light, different setups of light, filming faces and details and lighting scenes. So very, very interesting. Of course, we're talking about a more primitive technology, but still some of the things that he says really are timeless and really can be applied still today, in my opinion. And I guess that I'm gonna leave you, with these kind of bonus tips, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know if you did down below. Give this video a like because it really helps recommending this video for more people, and then more people get to know the video or get to know Caravaggio in this case as well. And so also I wanted to ask you if you'd like to see more videos like this where we break down painters. Yes, why, who? Let me know all down below. And yeah, for now I'm gonna, just hopefully seeing you here in the channel very, very soon, because I'm leaving for now. So take care, stay safe, keep shooting, keep creating, keep learning photography, and I'm out. Peace.